Wait until you hear this, because what started as a normal fan encounter with Kody Brown and Robyn Brown turned into one of the wildest and most unexpected moments fans can't stop talking about. And trust me, you are not ready for the twist that comes next. So hit subscribe right now because you don't want to miss what everyone is about to find out. You are not going to believe how something so small turned into such a massive conversation, because it all started with what should have been a completely ordinary moment. Just a casual outing, nothing dramatic, nothing headline-worthy, until suddenly everything shifted when a fan spotted Kody and Robyn out in public. And at first, it seemed like the kind of interaction that happens all the time. A quick recognition, maybe a smile, maybe even a photo to remember the moment. But what happened next is what sent people into a spiral of reactions, questions, and non-stop discussion. Because during that brief encounter, the fans shared a detail that nobody expected and honestly, nobody could ignore. She claimed that Robyn smelled like onions, and that one statement completely changed the tone of the story, because now it was no longer just about seeing familiar faces out in the real world. It became something oddly specific, strangely memorable, and almost impossible to forget. And this is where the curiosity really begins to build, because people immediately started asking the same question. How does something like that even happen? Especially in a public setting like a mall, where you would expect everything to be neutral, clean, and ordinary. But instead, this one detail made everything feel unusual and slightly mysterious, because it opens the door to so many possibilities. Was it something she ate earlier? Was it something she had been cooking before going out? Or was it simply one person's perception that got amplified the more it was shared and talked about? And the truth is, nobody really knows. But that uncertainty is exactly what makes the story so engaging, because it leaves room for speculation and interpretation. And that is where things really take off. Because once people start analyzing every possible explanation, the conversation grows bigger and bigger, pulling in more opinions, more reactions, and more curiosity. And what makes it even more interesting is that the same fan also described Robyn as not being particularly friendly, while at the same time saying that Kody was talkative and kind, which creates this contrast that people immediately latch onto, because it adds another layer to the story. Now, it is not just about the unexpected detail, but also about the dynamics of the interaction itself. And that combination is what keeps people hooked, because it feels like there's more to uncover, more to understand, more to question. And just when you think the story might settle into something simple, it continues to evolve, because the setting itself becomes part of the mystery. They were at a mall, which makes the entire situation even more puzzling, because it raises the question of how that specific detail could stand out in that environment, where everything is designed to be consistent, predictable, and unremarkable. And yet, somehow, this moment broke through that normalcy and became something people could not stop talking about. And as the story spreads, it starts to take on a life of its own, because different people bring different perspectives. Some find it funny and relatable, remembering their own experiences with strong food scents that seem to follow them no matter what they do, while others take a more analytical approach, trying to figure out what it might mean or what it might say about the situation. And this mix of humor, curiosity, and speculation is what gives the story its momentum, because it keeps people engaged, it keeps them thinking, and most importantly, it keeps them watching, because every new reaction adds something new to the narrative. And just when it feels like everything has been said, another angle appears, another question is raised, another possibility is explored. And that constant movement is what creates suspense, because it never fully settles into one explanation or one conclusion. Instead, it keeps circling back to that original moment, that unexpected detail that sparked everything. And it makes you wonder if there's more to the story that has not been revealed yet. And that sense of mystery is what holds attention, because it creates a loop where the beginning and the end are connected in a way that feels continuous. Like no matter matter how much you analyze it, there's always something missing, something unresolved, something that keeps pulling you back in. And as the conversation continues to grow, it becomes clear that this is not just about one encounter or one comment. It's about the way stories are shared and how quickly they can expand into something much bigger than their original form. Because once a detail like this enters the public space, it does not stay small. It evolves, it spreads, and it invites people to participate in the discussion, whether through humor, curiosity, or deeper reflection. And that participation is what gives it energy, because it transforms a simple moment into an ongoing conversation that feels alive, constantly shifting, constantly developing, and constantly drawing people back in to see what comes next. And even though it might seem like just a passing story, it carries a certain weight, because it highlights how easily attention can be captured by something unexpected, and how that attention can grow into something that feels much more significant than the moment itself. And that is what makes it so compelling, because it is not just about what happened, but about how it was perceived, how it was shared, and how it continues to be interpreted by everyone who hears it. And just when you think you've reached the end of the story, you realize that you are actually back at the beginning, asking the same question all over again. What really happened in that moment? And why did it stand out so much? And the more you think about it, the more you realize that the answer is not simple, because it is not just about the detail itself, but about everything surrounding it. The context, the personalities, the reactions, and the way it all comes together to create something that feels larger than life. And that is why people cannot stop talking about it, because it leaves just enough unanswered to keep the curiosity alive, just enough intrigue to keep the conversation going, and just enough uncertainty to make you wonder if there is still more to uncover, even after everything has already been said. And just when it feels like the story could not possibly stretch any further, it somehow finds a way to pull everyone back in again. Because now the focus is no longer only on what happened in that brief encounter, but on how people are reacting to it. And the reactions themselves have become a whole new layer of entertainment, curiosity, and even reflection. Because some people immediately laugh it off, seeing it as one of those oddly specific moments that feel exaggerated yet strangely relatable, while others take a more serious tone, trying to break it down piece by piece, as if there's a deeper meaning hidden beneath the surface. And that contrast in reactions is what keeps the story alive, because it creates a continuous flow of perspectives where no single interpretation feels final or complete. And as more people weigh in, the narrative keeps shifting, evolving, and expanding into something much bigger than anyone expected. And this is where things start to get even more interesting, because the conversation slowly begins to move beyond that original detail and into a broader discussion about public image, perception, and how quickly opinions can form based on a single moment. Because when someone shares an experience like this, it does not exist in isolation. It becomes part of a larger narrative that people are already familiar with. And that familiarity shapes how the story is received, interpreted, and shared again and again. And that is exactly what is happening here. Because viewers who have followed these personalities for years already have their own impressions, their own assumptions, and their own expectations. So when a new detail is introduced, it either reinforces what they already believe or challenges it in a way that sparks even more discussion. And that dynamic is what gives the story its staying power, because it is not just about one moment. It's about how that moment fits into a much bigger picture and how it interacts with everything people think they know. And just when the conversation seems to settle into one direction, it shifts again, because another topic enters the scene, bringing with it a completely different kind of energy. And that is the discussion around personal growth, independence, and the idea of starting over later in life. Because while one part of the audience is still focused on the humor and curiosity of the original encounter, another part is paying attention to a different narrative unfolding at the same time, one that involves change, self-reflection, and the process of redefining one's life. And this shift creates a layered storytelling experience where lighthearted moments exist alongside deeper, more introspective themes. And that combination keeps viewers engaged because it offers something for everyone, whether they are looking for entertainment or something more meaningful to think about. And as the focus moves toward this new topic, the conversation becomes more complex because it introduces questions about authenticity, consistency, and the way personal journeys are shared, especially when those journeys are presented in a way that suggests growth, transformation, and even guidance for others. And this is where people start to look a little closer, because while the message of independence and self-discovery is generally seen as positive, there is also a sense of curiosity about how that message aligns with what has been shown in the past, and whether the narrative being presented now fully reflects the reality of the journey, or if it has been shaped in a way that emphasizes certain aspects while leaving others in the background. And that curiosity is not necessarily negative, but it does add another layer of depth to the conversation because it encourages people to think critically about what they are seeing and hearing, rather than simply accepting it at face value. And that kind of engagement is what keeps the story moving forward, because it turns passive viewers into active participants who are constantly analyzing, questioning, and discussing every detail. And just when it feels like the conversation might reach a conclusion, it loops back once again to that original moment, that unexpected detail that sparked everything. And suddenly, it all connects, because the humor, the curiosity, the analysis, and the deeper reflections all stem from that one brief encounter and the way it was shared and interpreted. And that realization is what makes the story feel complete, yet still open-ended at the same time. Because even though so much has been said, there is still a sense that something remains unresolved, something that keeps the curiosity alive and keeps people coming back to revisit the story from different angles. And that is the true power of a moment like this, because it goes beyond the surface and becomes something that people can engage with on multiple levels, whether through humor, speculation, or deeper thought. And as long as that engagement continues, the story never truly ends. It simply evolves, taking on new meanings, new perspectives, and new layers with each passing conversation. And that is why it remains so compelling, because it is not just a story. It is an ongoing experience that invites people to be part of it, to interpret it in their own way, and to keep the conversation going long after the original moment has passed. And just like that one unexpected moment involving Kody Brown and Robyn Brown turned into a story nobody saw coming. And if you thought this was wild, just wait until what comes next. So make sure you hit subscribe right now, because you don't want to miss the next update everyone will be talking about.